So on today's Card Academy lesson, we're going to be going over Ed Marlowe's ATFUS move. ATFUS just simply stands for Anytime Face-Up Switch. Now we've gone over variations to this and we've even gone over this exact move. However, I wanted to dedicate an entire lesson to this particular concept because it is probably the #1 packet change that magicians do the most often with a deck of playing cards. So let's just get right into it and show you what I'm talking about. So this is what the move would look like. We're just showing a couple cards to an audience. In this case, the 8 of clubs, we have the Queen of hearts, we have the 4 of hearts, and lastly we have the Ace of diamonds. And of course those cards are then placed on a table or on a surface. And guess what? We've now switched in what is the 4 aces in a very fair way and in a very easy way. So let's get over the actual mechanics of the movement itself. So there are many different variations of this particular move, but for this one, what we're doing is that we have 3 random cards and then finally the 4 aces. And that's what we're gonna get into the switch with. Now, the way you could do that is very simple. We could just have the 4 aces on the bottom of the pack, and we could just simply take these cards and place them on top just like that. So all I've done is that I've spread these cards to myself, I've squared them up, and I've turned the deck over, now placing these cards on top, which puts me in a position that I need to be in, which is 3 random cards and the 4 aces. Now, when you're showing these cards, what you're gonna do is I'm actually getting a break right there below the top card of the deck. The reason for that is because now I'm gonna pick that card up and actually keep a break right there below that card, much like in the previous change that we talked about. However, this one is gonna be as a cover card. So right now, in picking that up, we've actually taken the opportunity to use our thumb to get that card and to have a thumb break. And this is going to be very important in a moment. Now, you also want to minimize the break. So a tip on that is that you want to get the break on the right corner of the deck. So notice that the break is right there on the right corner of the deck, and that is where I'm holding my break. So that way you minimize the break on the majority of angles. So all I've done there is that as I turn the deck over, I'm just simply getting a break, squaring these cards up, and picking that face down card as I now do the count. So the count is as follows. I'm going to use my left thumb to slide off this card, and then I'm going to place it on the bottom of the packet, but I'm going to jog it to the right. In this case, jogging it to the left. And now I'm going to score that card up. Now you could score that card up by pressing it against your thumb. Now the reason for that is because we're getting the spectators accustomed to the action of that card being squared up. In a moment, we're going to use that action to deposit the cards on top of the deck, and this provides a very natural cover. So in this case, I've shown the first card, and I've now squared it up. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the next card, thumb it off, have it jogged to the left, and then use the base of my thumb to square it up. Do the same exact thing for this one. The only difference is that now, when I square this card up, look at what's actually happening. I'm depositing the remaining cards that are underneath the break on top of the deck. So now if we look, we actually have those 3 cards underneath that cover card, all covered by this wonderful little dodge of squaring that card up, apparently squaring it up in the packet, but really we've now switched in our 4 aces or whatever 4 of a kind you want. Of course, under the pretext of displaying this last card. So in this case, remember that we're not overshowing. That's one of the lessons that we talked about on packet switches. We're not overshowing. And in this particular variation, we haven't, because we've just taken the opportunity to take these cards for ourselves. We could say, oh, we just have some random cards here. We've turned over the deck, and now we're ready for the actual movement itself. Now, when it comes to it, we haven't actually shown the cards, so now we're going to show the cards, which is why you're actually getting into the actual packet change. So one more time from this angle, we've just simply taken the card to the bottom and squared it up. Taken the next card, squared it up. Taken the next card, squared it up, and that's where you deposit those cards on top of the deck. And now you could draw attention to the last card as you turn over the cards and very fairly put them on the table or wherever they need to go. But now you've switched in your 4 aces. Now, a very common variation of this is for the Hofzinser ace routine, where you're doing the anytime face-up switch, but in this case, what we're doing is that we're actually switching in one of the aces for a face-down card, and we're actually putting that face-up ace in the middle of the deck, or actually somewhere near the top. So the way that that works is very simple. Now here what we're going to do is that we're actually going to have the ace that we're going to switch out on top of the packet. So right now, let's say the ace is going to be the ace of clubs that we want switched out. Now what's going to happen, we're going to square this card up, but we're actually keeping and stealing that card that's directly underneath on top, because that's going to be the card that we're going to switch in to the packet. So as we're drawing attention to the packet, I've just taken the opportunity to steal that card here in the back. Now it's going to be the exact same thing as before. As I'm displaying the cards, I've gotten a break underneath this card, which is going to be our cover card. So now when I square up these cards, I'm actually lifting that card up and I have a break right there. Let's see if I could get that in focus right there. There you go. So I have a break underneath that card just like that. So now I'm going to do the exact same action. However, I'm going to execute the steal on the first ace. So right now, I've taken this ace and I've put it in the same position as before. So when I square it up, that ace is now going underneath that cover card as I count off the next card and place it under the packet. So let's go over what just happened. So if we actually take the opportunity to note exactly what's taken place is as follows. We have a card that's been stolen right there underneath the aces. We're then showing the aces, and here we're getting a break below the top card of the deck, which is going to be our cover card. We're doing the exact same action as before, stealing that card underneath and having a break. I'm going to deal off this ace and place it in that position so that now when I square it up, look what's going to happen. I'm going to deposit the face down card, which is going to cover the ace and make it look like that card is going in the back of this packet. Now this is taking place as I use my thumb to slide off this card and place it behind, much like before. I could very cleanly square this card up now, deal the next one as well, and I've shown all 4 aces. But let's look at what we actually have. We have 3 aces and a face down card. Now that's taken place all under the guise of counting the cards. Now if we look at the deck, what do we have here? We have the ace of clubs that's underneath the cover card. So by simply giving the deck a cut, that card is now buried in the middle, and we have this card that is face down among the aces. So this is an excellent use and very common in the Hofstadter ace problem. This solves it as clean could be, and we have one ace that's face up in the middle of the deck and a card that is here that could be revealed to be the spectator's potential selection. Now another variation doesn't involve holding any weird nefarious breaks. We're just showing the cards like this to the participant, sliding them under and showing them to the participants again like this in this way until the last one, where now we could show these cards to be the cards that we showed them. And of course, guess what? We actually have switched them in for the 4 aces, and there's even a cover card. So that's a nice way of doing the move. However, it's going to be limited in terms of its use because you are going to have to spread these cards to show them to be changed now or different. Now, if you want to avoid that, we could actually take advantage of the fact that, well, because the cards are face up on a face down deck, we could actually lift up on a natural break and pick these cards up. However, let's get into the actual mechanics of the move itself. Very simply, all we're doing is the exact same thing from the first variation. We have 3 random cards as well as the 4 aces that we're going to switch in, and we're getting a break underneath this top card. So now in squaring that up, we're just taking the cards. We're not necessarily holding any weird thumb break, but keep in mind that my hands are covering the fatness of the packet from the front. So now we're doing the exact same actions as before. We're sliding the card out and squaring it up much the same as before. Picking it up and squaring it up, picking the card up, and now lastly for this one, all I'm going to do is square it up and leave those cards on top of the deck. So now look at what we have. We have a situation where we have the 4 aces that have now been switched in and a cover card here. So from here, you could proceed in a couple different ways. You could just lift up in the back until you just see back to back, turn these cards face down, and place them on the table wherever they need to go. Now, usually magicians tell you not to lift up from the back, but in this case, it makes sense because we're just simply lifting up the aces. So it makes sense because that's what you would do. You would just lift up on the aces and you would turn them face down. The other alternative is to just lift up on the natural break, separating between this card over here and the aces. This is going to take a little bit of practice because do keep in mind that you already have a natural break here for the other cards that are being hidden by the cover card. So you're going to have to work on getting only those aces, so you lift them up each and every single time. But now you could just take this packet and place it where it needs to be on a table or in a box or wherever it needs to go. But we actually have switched in those 4 aces, and you don't have to keep any weird breaks that are happening simultaneously. Another variation of the last technique I just showed you is as follows. We're just counting those cards off on top of the deck, and then ultimately we're going to up jog them, and that is where we accomplish our switch. So now we've noticed that those are the 4 aces. So That variation is pretty much the same exact thing. The only difference is that we're actually keeping the thumb break underneath the cover card. So now all we're doing is we're counting off those 3 cards on top of the deck. We're not squaring anything up. And now when we get to this last card, I'm just going to bring this packet with this break on top of the deck and push all 4 cards forward. So now what this looks like is that it looks like, well, of course, that this is the top of the deck and these are the 4 cards, but really these are the 4 cards that we switched in, the 4 aces. So that way it's just a quicker way of doing it, one that doesn't really require a lot of effort as well. We do still keep that thumb break aspect of it where we have the thumb break underneath as we're showing the packets, but we're not having to square the cards up like this. We're just squaring them up on top of the deck and apparently pushing the cards forward, and that's the movement that we're trying to copy. So at speed, it just looks like this. We're just counting the cards off, pushing it forward, and that is where we have our switch for the 4 aces. So as you can see, what gets people really excited about this move is the versatility. There are hundreds of different variations that you could do, just involving holding different cards, switching in 1 card instead of 3, switching in the whole packet. There's different variations that you're going to have to play around with just by handling the cards and doing that movement. However, the reasoning is very specific. The reason that you're squaring the cards up in that way is so that you could get the spectators accustomed to the action, so that ultimately when you do the sneaky thing, haha, I said do, but when you do the sneaky move, it's covered under an action that the spectators are already accustomed to. So this is probably one of the most, I would say, prevalent packet switches in the world of Magic for the reason of its simplicity. It's easy to do. It's not that complicated. It does require holding several breaks at the same time, which is a good skill to have because you're holding a pinky break, you're transferring it to the thumb break, and it's a nice way of practicing that action under fire, in this case, under the action of doing that particular display of showing the cards to the audience. As I've mentioned in other packet change lessons, it's very important that the reason you're doing the actual count or the switch or the display is that you are showing them for the first time. You don't want to be overproving. You don't want to be showing those cards 1,000 times. If you take the cards out of the deck and then you show them to the audience and then you get the cards in a position to do the change and then you actually show them again and then you show them one more time doing a false count, that's too much. So really you're showing them once and you're moving along and that's it. So do keep that in mind when you're practicing this move and trying to determine where it is that you want to put it in your set. But apart from that, thank you guys for being members of the Pick Cake Magic Academy. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope to see you on the next one.